everyone, Ryan Ember here with the Sweet Spot live on location in Nashville at the 2026 Hotel Data Conference here with Jan Freitag, National Director at CoStar. Jan, thank you so much for taking some time. It's very busy. You're hosting almost 1,000 hoteliers here.
Yes,
the energy.
18th year, sold out again. So heads up, next year we'll sell out again. But thanks for being here and sort of taking the pulse on the industry. We appreciate it.
100%. Congratulations. Amanda Height opened us this morning saying last year when she unveiled the forecast, there were audible gasps in the crowd. I feel like behind us, people have been skipping, jumping down, up and down these escalators. Share with us, we got a revised forecast.
Yeah, so we're proposing that RevPAR this year is up 4.4%. So that is the second upward revision we had to make, quote unquote. I mean, the data is just so strong.
Right.
But then that means that next year we're going to see growth, but it's much slower growth. So next year we're thinking that RevPAR growth is going to be like 2.1% or so. So the negative way to say this is, oh, our growth rate is cut in half. The positive way to say is like, oh, we have growth on growth, right? 4% this year, 2% next year.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, a lot of people are going into, we've talked to hoteliers here on the Sweet Spot, going into their budgets. These are very, very important numbers for them as they go into their budgets because they want to forecast. When we met last, we were at NYU. There had been 0 soccer games played in the U.S. Now, 104 games later, we got a crown champion. Obviously had a big impact. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But that strong performance, one of your big takeaways from this morning was strong performance is going to equal some tougher comps in 2027, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had arguably easy comps this year, right? The Q2, 3, and 4 RevPAR performance last year was negative. So we would outperform it this year. That was not a question. But because, RevPAR in the second quarter was up 5.7%. That is a very stout result, obviously driven in June partially by the World Cup number we're going to talk about. What that means for next year is, oh wow, we're not going to see that performance again. And so my conversation this morning with hoteliers is all about, okay, so how do you massage your owner?
Right.
How do you have this conversation with your owner, with your team to say, look, there's still going to be growth, but we really have to think about this, and I heard this morning from an asset manager, at next year as a year of 10 months and 2 months. Really take June and July out of your annual number and say, okay, so what's the growth for that? And then, June and July is just going to be tough costs.
Yeah, probably something that a lot of markets who hosted Taylor Swift a couple years ago had to deal with.
Yes.
And then maybe what LA is going to have to deal with in 29 after the Olympics in 28.
Yeah, exactly. So we're already talking now about the Olympics. We're going to talk about, obviously, the World Cup in 4 years over in Europe and what is the performance there. So these sporting events are just the gifts that keep on giving.
And travelers continue what we heard this morning. Consumers continue to prioritize travel, which is really, really great for obviously our industry. But not without its cautionary tales. You also had a watch your margins kind of take away from that. Maybe expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, so we've had for the last year and for the last couple of years really this interplay between room rate growth and the rate of inflation being higher than room rate growth. And we're taking the rate of inflation sort of as a proxy for how much more things are expensive. And the costs for hotels are obviously going up. Higher labor costs, higher insurance costs, higher food costs, higher costs, energy, everything.
Sure.
So if your costs are going up, in order for your margins to expand, you need to drive room rate or revenue faster than the cost increase, and that just is not happening. So my colleague Isaac Collazo spent 55 slides and an hour explaining how margins are decelerating, unfortunately. Now, the total dollar amount, everything gets more expensive, but it also means we're having more money available as profit, but the margins are coming down. And that's really to me, the main takeaway from HCC this year for the budget conversation for 2027 is watch your margin.
Yeah, efficiencies, always looking for that, especially in these tight margin areas. So, and then lastly, your whole presentation this morning was themed around the World Cup. And I do want to bring it up because, obviously there was, the quote was 104 Super Bowls, right? and you kind of explored that case a little bit, found out maybe that might not be the case.
Not quite, yeah, exactly. So the FIFA president had said at the time, just to explain to American audiences, hey, we have 104 soccer games and they look like 104 Super Bowls. That is of course not the case, and that was never meant to be the case. Super Bowl is the largest cultural sport event in America. It happens once a year.
Right.
And to sort of translate that was, I thought, always a little silly. So it turns out that the 104 Super Bowls did not come to pass, and it was more like 30 Super Bowls, maybe if that. So yeah, it was still a very healthy impact. If you look at the markets that hosted games, Kansas City, New York, Philadelphia, Boston, very, very strong room rate growth. Interestingly, in some markets, actually, occupancy declines. We saw that specifically in Vancouver, but we saw it in Atlanta, we saw it in Boston. Why is that? Well, because corporate America, meeting travelers, meeting planners, said, you know what, I don't need to compete with the Tartan Army in Boston for a meeting. Let me just stay away. Let me have that meeting in August, or let me move that meeting to Chicago, for example. Chicago had a very, very strong June, July meeting calendar. So it's the room rate increase was absolutely expected, and is exactly what came to pass. It just wasn't 104 Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, that just proves we are a collective of markets. Things are going to be obviously different in each one with different factors there. And there was also an interesting stat, fascinating stat, I want to bring it up, about booking windows that you brought up there, if you want to expand on that.
Yeah, so I got this totally wrong in the run-up to the World Cup, because I thought, look, if somebody books that FIFA ticket a year out and their airplane ticket 6 months out, surely they would book their hotel 3 months out.
Yeah.
That did not happen.
Right.
And so we saw specifically the chart that I had this morning for arrival dates, June 11, 12, 13, 20 basis points of, 20 points of occupancy was booked after June 8th. So that's a booking window of like 3 or 4 days.
Wow.
For an event that you knew what happened, 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And you had a ticket from 1 year ago. So I just completely thought that the leisure traveler, the soccer traveler would also book their room way ahead. That did not come to pass.
Very interesting. I wonder if that's a macro trend happening right now, those booking windows starting to shorten a little bit.
Yeah, and maybe that's a takeaway for our friends, in LA who are hosting the Olympics. Hey, be very mindful how you manage that booking window.
Lessons from history learned there.
Yes.
Final, as we wrap up, I always like to get any, you look at a lot of data, obviously.
Yes.
So any interesting data points that really stood out or surprising?
The July data came out yesterday, and the luxury class RevPAR growth was 16%.
Wow.
So, wow. Talk about A, amazing, but B, tough comps.
Yeah.
In July of next year. But it was an amazing, amazing performance. July was very, very strong. And June as well. So we clearly saw, July was helped a little bit by 4th of July, 4th of July calendar shift, but also the World Cup, obviously the final and the bronze medal games, they all helped. So July was strong, June was strong. So now I think things are getting a little bit more normal from here on in.
Awesome. Well, we'll continue to look ahead as you will, but thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule, joining us.
Thanks for being here.
All right.
Thank you.